I wanted to talk about how risky and extreme methods yield greater results, but we're scared of taking risks or doing anything too extreme. And I'm struggling with it. This is like I've stopped recording and started again a couple of times now because I'm scared to talk about it. I'm scared to say like take risks and do extreme shit because it goes against the grain, and there's a reason why everybody on the internet or everybody in books, like different people throughout history who have had influence, have been careful about promoting things that are too extreme or too risky, because they don't want to be held accountable for when those risks or extreme methods backfire or have unwanted detrimental results, or people injure themselves or send themselves crazy or whatever the situation might be. But this is just my video journal for those who are new. It's not intended to be advice or guidance. I'm just expressing what I'm thinking and feeling in the present moment. And I think there's something helpful in here somewhere for people, because one thing that has taken me a lot of effort to break through is not being scared of the risks and what some people might call extreme approaches to all different areas of life. To just like, you know, somebody might go for a camping trip on the weekend, but I decided 5 months straight of like driving around the country. Like, why not? Or the way that I'm eating at the moment, like people might freak out and think that it's extreme, and I understand that with these extremes you're kind of dancing at the edge of where the risks are, and it's like, because you are already at the extreme, if you're living your life this way, if you're taking big risks and you're trying things that are way outside the comfort zone of, you know, the average Joe citizen, like you're already right next to danger. You're like right at the edge of destruction or like detrimental things happening, bad things happening to you. So I get that, like eating like crazy and training like crazy, you are putting yourself closer to risk, and you're like, you know, there's the margin for error shrinks. You know, there's the margin for error. If you do things the average Joe citizen way, you have so much margin for error, you're never going to hurt yourself. You're never going to cause any dramatic effects that are going to impact you for the rest of your life, you know. But when you shrink that margin for error and increase the risk and do things a little bit more extreme, you will guarantee that your results will be exponentially higher as you move in that direction, but you also open yourself up to the risk. So that's what I was struggling with, like articulating that, because my crazy side is like, just encourage people to take all the risks and like do things in a more extreme way. Why is nobody else like talking about this? Because you can accelerate everything, and not just in like, it's one thing to push yourself in one particular area of your life and shrink that margin for error, but what if you were doing it like all through your life in all these different areas, really pushing yourself and seeing how much you could maximize your potential. And I have to be honest and admit that what came to mind is, again, like, why are we trying to maximize? Why are we trying to push it? Why are we taking this risk? Why are we shrinking the margin for error to the point where we might hurt ourselves, or it could become a risk that's not worth taking? And YOLO is the response from myself. Like, you only live once. You don't have time to tiptoe around being really careful with life. Like, it's happening so quickly, and I would rather dive in straight into the deep end and find out what I'm made of. And maybe I will make some mistakes, and I definitely have, and I've hurt myself and I've caused problems, and you know, thankfully nothing particularly permanent that I'm aware of. Like, I'm pretty okay considering how much I've put my body and my mind through. I guess as well, the issue with having that extreme, like, high risk attitude where there's no margin for error and you just go is like that attitude can become an identity, and like then people sort of take like one thing that you're promoting, like do things in a high risk extreme way, push yourself to the limits and all that, and then they live their whole life that way. And you know, it might be an opportunity for people not to take responsibility for their own risk taking, because then they can point to somebody outside of themselves and say, you know, Kai said that it would be okay if I just forgot about the limits and just did everything that I ever desired to do. Like, and what's in my mind right now is like hedonism, the philosophy of like life is all about seeking the highest possible pleasure, and that could be seen as like an extreme way to live, like just trying to maximize pleasure, trying to enjoy your life to the fullest in every single moment. And I have my own issues with that, because I understand that the more that you're seeking pleasure, the more that you're actually going to suffer. Like, that's from my own personal experience of trying to mask pain, which is what I see that as. But I'm sure that there's people who are living that philosophy in their own way, but that's sort of the point, you know? So if I've got a philosophy of like pushing things to the extreme and taking huge risks and just to find out more about myself, or to grow at a rapid pace, or just get through my mistakes faster is one of the huge benefits. Like fuck shit up enough faster so that I know where the boundaries of my potential are, instead of like just staying in this safe place where I'm not really growing and I'm not really there's no chance of hurting myself or anything going wrong, but I'm not growing either. I'm just kind of being, which of course is a positive thing if you can just be. But I want to explore, you know. So it's one of those moments where I'm like recording something and my intention was one way, and then what I'm realizing through the journal is something else. There's something inside of me that I want to share. It's like, just do it. Like, just go for it. Just do all the crazy things. Don't be afraid. But it's like I'm scared that people will receive a different message to what I'm actually sharing. Like, the thing that I really want people to understand is like the whole world is kind of like bubble wrapped. Like society and like Western culture, kind of like the culture that I know is like bubble wrapped. It's like so like safety. It's like we're playing in a kindergarten where like all of the risks are taken out of it, and the scissors are blunt and the glue's non-toxic. Like there's no way to get into any kind of real trouble. And you know, it might sound absurd to say that that's an issue, but I really think that it is sometimes, because one thing that I learned from taking off and driving around the country is like, I just wanted a real challenge. I wanted real fear, like real uncertainty, real unknown, and to actually put myself in a situation where I had no idea what I was doing, and like it could actually go wrong and I could die in the desert or some shit. Like I wanted that. I wanted to feel alive, like I was actually living because I was capable of living. Like I wasn't just in this like safe cookie cutter world where everything was done for us, and like I can get anything that I want and need at the click of a button on a screen, or like go down to the shops or whatever. And that's one thing. Like, just And you can't really tell someone this stuff without, because if you haven't had the experience of taking big risks and going to the extreme, and you just hear somebody tell you, like, do something ridiculous and, like, don't listen to any of the safety or, you know, just go for it and just do it and hurt yourself. It sounds really bad. Like, it doesn't, I don't know if there's a way to articulate this in a way that doesn't sound negative, like, doesn't sound dangerous, like. But yeah, we live in this, like, bubble-wrapped society where we have no idea what we're capable of, and we have no idea what our potential is. And when we go looking for answers about how we can grow, the majority of the stuff that's out there, I'd say like 95% of the material that you can find through your research with Google or reading books or watching podcasts, there's a lot of stuff that's just so riddled with safety precautions and disclaimers and don't do this, don't do that, that you have no opportunity to explore. Like, I always like contemplate what it would be like if I arrived here and there was no history, like no culture, no society, but there were still people, and we were just like, you know, the early in history, like early people, like before anybody else came and started making up the construct of like the matrix that we like. A matrix literally means consensual illusion or something like that. Like the matrix is like what we all have agreed is reality, you know, and it's like fluid and it's always changing, and different people, like a soccer field is a matrix. I've shared that metaphor before. Like, it's not really a soccer field. It's like we've agreed that those goalposts mean that's when the ball goes in there, that's one goal, and the boundaries, when the ball goes out there, then you've got to throw it back in. Like, we create all these rules around what's actually here, and then we go, that's reality as well, and we all agree on it, and then we forget that we agreed on it, and we're all playing this game based on these rules that we've forgotten we even created ourselves. So imagine you got here before that, and you were like one of the first people, and there were no rules yet, there was no matrix yet, and you were creating it for yourself. Like, what would you do? Like, what would you be exploring first? You're the first person to find a piece of fruit, and you're just like, this is the best thing in the world, and you'd just like eat fruit for ages probably, because it would be delicious and sweet and satisfying and rejuvenating and like give you energy. Or like, I always play with the idea of like, you're the first person to ever have sex. Like, how would you actually have sex if you were the first, if there was no programming, no porn, no movies, no romantic novels, no stories that you've heard, no growing up in high school with sex ed and all the confused testosterone boys crammed into a room together, or girls, like whatever, and like, you know, all of this stuff's all around. If you just appeared here as a like fully grown like man or woman or whatever, and you just were able to have sex for the first time and nobody had given you any ideas about it, like, it would be so different. You would not do the things that you do now. Like, you would, like, even just like the slightest pleasure would just be the most incredible thing ever, and you would take your time with it, and you would want to do it all day, every day, for ages, and you would just like think it's the best thing in the world. But sadly, like, most of us, by the time we make it through the matrix of society and we come of age and we're able to explore anything, not just this, but like any aspects of life, we've already got so much projections onto it and ideas about it that we can't even experience the thing remotely close to for what it is. Like, it doesn't feel as good as it would feel if everybody just left you the fuck alone and let you live your life. And there's no way to undo all this stuff. Like, you can kind of do these contemplation exercises and thought experiments like I just did, and like maybe play with that, and like just next time you're sitting with a piece of fruit, like just go, wow, this is incredible, this is so delicious and so sustaining, and just like, oh, like all of that I need in this world. Like, or the next time that you have sex, you could actually have sex as if you've never done it before, and forget all of the preconceptions and things, which could be difficult for a lot of the people these days who have completely distorted their relationship with their own bodies, and like, you know, being addicted to pornography and all this stuff. Like, I guess like I'm off on a weird fork in the road here from my original intention, but it's all connected, because what I was saying in the beginning is like taking risks and doing things in an extreme way, that is outside of the matrix. Like there's like a little safe zone of reality that's the bubble wrapped society that I'm talking about, and there's so much to explore outside of that, but we kind of forget that we are playing this game within these boundaries that are an illusion. Like at any time you could live so differently, like, and you could change so dramatically that you would be unrecognizable in no time at all. You could behave differently. Like everything can shift in an instant, but we're afraid. We're not even afraid. We don't even have the opportunity to be afraid. I think that's the thing that frustrates me, and that's the thing that I'm trying to share. Like, we don't even get the chance to feel the fear of what it would be like to face something real, because there's so many layers and layers and layers and layers of this matrix, all this stuff that we've like slapped onto what's here, and like it's all really, like, so much of it is arbitrary. It wouldn't matter if you didn't have any of this information. Who would you be without it, you know? Like, of course, that's another thing that could be taken to an extreme as a philosophy. But, like, a lot of people need to stop trying to identify with a particular philosophical position, and allow your mind to wander, and allow yourself to consider different perspectives, different points of view. Like, don't hold on to something so tightly because you think like this is truth, like this is the only truth that I have, so I got to keep it safe. Like, it's okay. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to have an anchor. Like, I know that could even be taken to a crazy extreme, but just exploring, I guess, like, I kind of have this safe place inside myself, like a foundation of certainty, and it's not much. It's so much easier because I've gone to the absolute core of having absolutely nothing and realizing that I'm okay. Like, I've had the physical experience of like, all I need is shade and water, and then it's okay. I'm going to be okay for ages, and then eventually, like, I couldn't starve to death if I tried, is where I'm at in life right now. And that's a powerful place to be. Like, even wherever I am in the world, I'm pretty sure I could find something edible just with the basic instincts that I have and the basic knowledge that I have. And I'm always going to find water, and I'm not afraid of nature at all. I feel a part of nature. So I feel like that's what we're missing out on so much. Like, being able to face reality for what it is behind all of the shit that we've projected onto it. And if we could just, like, that's why I take in a bit of risk, and doing things in a more extreme way can often puncture that veil, and you can experience something and go, wow, like, I'm not made of glass. I'm not what I thought I was. I'm so much more. And even if you just did one thing that was a little bit more extreme than you're used to, or took one significant risk and came through on the other side and you were okay, that could change your whole perception of reality. But it could also backfire on you and completely destroy your life. So that's why people don't really talk about it that much. But it's worth considering. It's worth contemplating deeply for yourself. As I always say, this is not advice or guidance. It's just me reflecting on shit. And I think this is like a pretty significant thing to consider. And it's certainly I would not be where I am today if I didn't do this. I would probably still be just spiraling. Like I would still be wondering why I don't feel alive, and I'd be depressed and etc, etc. Like I don't even want to think about where I would be. But taking the risks and not living in the bubble wrapped society world, and just not listening to all the people that are trying to make me be afraid of stuff that I haven't even experienced yet. I want to face fear in the real. I don't want to face fear in my imagination. That's boring, and it's not real, and it's actually scarier in my imagination than it is in the real. So now that I've faced fear and faced uncertainty and the unknown in the real, my imagination is now available for a lot more. Like I could face more, and I welcome more, and that's actually what happens. Like now I'm exploring things that I never allowed myself to consider, and that's what led me to this insight. Like I am now once again approaching different aspects of my life in an extreme manner and taking some new risks, and sure, it could backfire on me, but I think if you don't wipe yourself out completely with a risk, you definitely grow from it and learn from it. If you don't do some like permanent psychological or physical damage to yourself that like is really going to severely limit you. But even then, I still think, like I've seen people that have just powered straight through anything that life has handed them, and it's actually, you know, an example which it doesn't feel fair. It doesn't belong to me. But you know, anything could happen that could be a major setback, and the social bubble wrapped society thing to do is go, okay, I've had this major setback, this physical or mental catastrophe that's destroyed my life, so now I am a victim of my circumstance, and I shouldn't take any more risks. But that is actually the time when doing things in a more extreme way and taking more risks, like why wouldn't you? Like if you've fucked yourself up so much, and you survive that, for me it's a perception thing, like the meaning that I apply to it. Like you could either say like, oh, I've really done it this time and messed my life up, so I should probably take that as a sign that I should settle down and not try anymore. Or you could go, I survived the most horrendous like consequence of taking this risk. I'm okay, so let's go again. Let's try, go even deeper. Let's go harder. Let's explore more. I don't think that you ever have to really give up, but it's easy for me to say that in my current situation right now, because a lot of my risks have paid off. A lot of my risks didn't, but on a long enough timeline, it doesn't matter. Like if you took a few risks, and I think, that's a probably important thing to add. Early on when you take risks, you don't have a really good perception of like cost versus reward, and your risks will be stupid ones, and you will make mistakes. But I think that's even part of the journey, is like learning what risks are worth taking. And you know, on a long enough timeline, that's what I was going to say, on a long enough timeline, it actually works out to be worth it, I think. Unless you just kept getting the negative consequences and everything was going terribly for you. But I don't know, hopefully it doesn't need to be concluded, this journal. Hopefully I can just contemplate out loud and people can have their own insights. If you did get anything out of this video, please share it with other people who might benefit. Subscribe if you haven't already, and leave your comments down below. I love to hear what's going on in other people's awareness while I'm sharing what's going on in my awareness. I'll see you again when I'm looking at you. Whoop.